if I feel ready for this interview. I'm on Hashka. I haven't studied too much for it, but hopefully I will do it. Good. Hello, welcome to Hashkag Presents. Today we have a special night. We are gonna be discussing actually some of the aspects of Hashkag's life. We have with us fully known professor that is gonna talk about little aspects of Hashka. So let's make the welcome to. Hello, thank you for having me. Yeah, well, I am excited to talk about him. I mean, his work is amazing. You can see all his psychological aspect of his movies on how important he here for a film in general. So yeah, for sure. Just let's get it started. Why we don't talk more about his life? Uh, how was high school life? You can tell us a little bit about him. Yeah, for sure. Well, Hashkal was born in Britain. Um, he directed more than 53 pictures. He was born in 1899. He made two short films for the French Resistance and a number of episodes in actually the show Hashkal Presents. But his career can be divided in many aspects. Like there's many people who divide his life and his work in many phases because he has a lot of psychological aspects in his movies. But for now, I'm just gonna talk about first some aspects of his life, but also why he is important. Actually, he make a kind of like he play a lot this role where you have to show rating rather than say. You can see that he has this POVs of the face of the actor and of a POV of what the actor was seeing or how he used the cinematic and music scene to build up this suspense in this character. But the dialogue at the end was not good. It just was like you build this suspense between these people that were in the road, and then you just say like, "Oh, hey." It's like he was making fun, like, "What man? What is your problem?" He even actually in his action movies, or let's say that in his dramatic movies, he put a touch of humor. Uh, so it's kind of interesting his work. So I really like that of his job. But let's move on more about like the how his life was developed. So first, I'm gonna talk about the period. I will make a pause if you have more questions, and then I will talk more about his movies and how actually they are important, and a little bit about them. Yeah, absolutely. So go ahead. Okay, so Hashka, as I commented before, he was born in Britain, but then he moved to America. So kind of people divide also his work in the period that he was in Britain and in the period that he was in America, but also for many aspects of his life. So one of important aspects that people need to realize is that he was actually the son of a small London trans people who were uneducated. He was actually pretty modest in their means. He actually criticized his own movies at the point that every time that a critic says something good about his job, his works, he say that no, it was not enough because of this, and this. And actually, like his best work for him was Psycho, because although he has like 50 times what it was produced, um, all that money that was here because of that movie, he said that it was a movie that was able to transmit the audience all the aspects of the narration, of all the aspects of the plot, which, as I commented before, is actually what enriched his work. That he was able to transmit through pictures, through show the audience rather than telling them what it was going on. And pretty much his work was divided into genre of thrillers. It's pretty much almost all the horror movies right now nowadays, and suspense are actually influenced by his work. So, but let's talk more about his life. His parents were Victorians. So basically, he had a lot of morals in his life. He was a pretty church-going person. He actually was scrupulous, and he loved to experiment with his works. Like you can see how his works developed using film silent, then black and white, then color, then even you can see like a gender or a style was achieved, uh, like a suspense or horror, like in Frenzy and Family, or in Raven, or so forth. So he was kind of interesting how he actually can experiment uh, with all his movies, but um, also he reflects a lot of his personal aspect of his life in his movies. Like you can see in his very words how he actually his life as a Victorian, all his values and all this role that he has a family, or how he actually construct a family. You can see how he movies can portray that nuclear family, which is actually jumped to the phase two of his life, of what many people are saying, that is like how he actually achieved a new nuclear family, which commonly at the 50s and 60s, because he was able to portray a new nuclear family, he was able to show that um, that nuclear family in American society, or he was trying to, or he even could achieve this through his scenes. You can see that he actually was pretty influenced to use important locations of America, as the Hoover Dam and the Golden Bridge and so forth. So kind of like he was really concerned in showing rather than telling, as I mentioned it before. So I think that is one of these primordial characteristics of his work. Um, Also, you can see how his family actually impact him in his roles. His wife Alma and his daughter Patricia, you can see that how Alma actually helped him to develop all these aspects in his movie Ray Band, and also um, he was able to show in how was his relationship with his daughter in many of his films. So kind of these ones are actually the other periods. But then he has like kind of a collapse, because many people after Psycho, many of his movies were not so that influenced. Although Rebecca was actually is actually said to be one of his most successful works that actually make him successful in Hollywood movies. But you could see how in these three phases how he actually his movies change. And another personal aspect is how he is able actually to use a novelistic approach to his movies as well, and poetic, or even like you can see how he can do like kind of a poetic aspects, or even the hero or anti-hero. Like he actually uses a man who become obsessed with this blonde girl or this sexually attractive woman, and he's trying to persecute, or he actually tried to escape from his desires. Or we have this actor, so like, for example, you have like a this man who tries to have control over this woman, either by spoiling their absence, or like trying to encourage to change, like in Rear Window, or also he tried to transform them totally into a different woman, like in Vertigo, or he even killed them, like in Psycho, or even strangers in a train, like in North by West, or even like the man, how man actually tried to pursue this woman he desires. So there's many comedies in his movies, as I suggested before. You have like kind of aspects, like you have in North and West, you have these notorious comic things, or you also have Rebecca, Spellbound and Notorious, which were actually the movies that are cataloged like his most prominent works after Psycho because of what I mentioned before. But I mean, it's really what is important is that suspense that he achieves, like through the picture, like in Northern Northwest. Uh, there is a scene um, where it's Cary Grant is chased across a cornfield, but this killer who's trying to like kill him. There is a lot of scenes and shots of this successful scene, but then there is no dialogue at all. Like all the stage, all the scenes, it's actually what built up all that kind of suspense. What was not the dialogue narration, as many of the films nowadays. So it's kind of interesting how he actually experiment with this. Um, what else I can say? I don't know if you have another question. Oh, well, I will say that let's say yeah, why didn't discuss how was his success here in America? Well, actually, his work here in America was really important. I mean, his movies like Psycho in 1960s were precursors for the modern day horror films, and also inspired television shows as Bates Motel. On there's many other influences like his effects in cinemas, from the authorities to storyteller's approach of 70s. Like many of his formal techniques are used nowadays in famous arts, like his POV and his transitions and the use of time and frame. I mean, all these aspects are really important for film nowadays, not just for America, even for another countries. But let's say about his works, like for example, you have these important aspects in the movie, like for example in Rear Window we have this missing and this term of urban millennium. You have like the ingenuity of this American heroine Grace Kelly, or even illustrations and forms in his own uh, movies, and you can see many of them. Um, like you can also see his more prompt movie The Gear, which was almost autobiography. Well, it was a biography film of his starter relationship with actor Stevie Harding, or Making the Beer in 1963, and many other collaborations with his wife, which was an important aspect. But let's talk about actually recently they have a movie about Hitchcock of this actually intriguing relationship about with this actress, which is actually one of the I would say that is one of the experimental things that Hitchcock uh, was using, as I told you, how the character is actually used as a tool rather than that someone that is actually the important aspects of the movie. So, but you could see how he actually developed this in burst, like all these his scenes, like in the telephone and telephone cabin, how he actually achieved this kind of emotions, like it almost sounds like real, because he actually that's what he wanted to show the audience, like how his expression, like, rather than like how what she said, like oh I'm scared, really like showing them, because actually if you just thinking in this, that is how we live. We live through our eyes, and we live of how we see things rather than what we say. We pretty much learn about what we see. But I mean, I don't know if you have a little last question for me to talk more about the general aspects of his movies. Uh, his biggest work was Rebecca, as I told you before, and we have also how he used formal techniques like illumination, a lot of kind of aspects in his movies, like in Vertigo in 1958, in Marine 1964, in Shadow of Dog 1943, Tom Curtain in 1966, and The Trouble with Harry 1955. So, kind of, it's an important thing. Oh, another aspect of his life was that in 1939 he actually crossed the Atlantic and moved to America. He actually he started his career as a title card designer, uh, and then through many of these experiences he was able to become a commercial director, and almost I believe that the movies that started their career were in 1935, which was 30 Steps, Lenny Vanish, which was in 1938, which were movies that were nominated to Best Picture, as well as commented before, Rebecca in 1940 and Foreign Correspondent in 1940. But yeah, he was actually able to, like, all his film composition, all his film techniques, from the angles to the mise-in to the POV shots to the close-ups to the illumination, which was really important in his movies. The illumination you could see in Raven is unbelievable. You also can see how he managed the transitions so that people can develop the continuity of the scenes, like in his like in Rear Window. You can see how he's able to do through his scenes. And I don't know if you have last question. Yeah, pretty quick. You say that he had like kind of a movie, like kind of a geography. You can tell us more about it. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, there is. Unfortunately, there is not many aspects of his biography. So there's many autobiographies of him, like films, that show his work, but actually showed a pretty bad and nasty perception of him. Like they almost all these biographies show how was this kind of sexual attraction for this aspects, like in Birds, when he was working aside with his wife Alma, and you can see how it was kind of nasty, but yeah. But many of his biographies were like how this sexual tension between the characters and him And actually, you can. That is actually a really good question because I didn't say it before. But actually, an important aspect of his movies is actually the role that females had. Actually, you can see that many of his movies in the 50s and in the 60s, no, pretty much in 50s, you can see this role of this empowering woman who is actually like the focus or the strange. And you probably can explain this because of the influence of his daughter, Patricia, and his wife, Alma, which indeed is actually pretty habitual, so to say. So I don't know if you have another question as well. Yeah, you yeah, I understand. I mean, yeah, you comment about how he used actually like a form of Einstein. You were talking about how he was able to feel the expectations of the audience, giving like this blank so that they can like achieve suspense of the scenes, like in Birds, the open endedness, or even the black expressions, um, the blank uh, expressions of Einstein experiment. That is what you say thing, and how he achieved this through his facial expressions and how he used lighting, close-ups, the movement, the choreography, the accessories to develop all these kind of things. So I believe that actually that is actually a pretty good aspect that you actually tell us. So I think it's really really interesting. Or even I don't know if you remember, but an important aspect was the confined space that he used in Lifeboat, or the special effects in Spellbound, or the long takes in Rope. I mean, or the non-linguistic expressions that have like a psychological context in the characters. But I don't know if actually you have like that relationship. But I mean, I believe like many of his movies actually were like related to Henry James' style, like that novelistic approach of his stories. Like many of his stories were pretty poetic, like in Rear Window and so forth. So I believe that the only question that I will say is that if you have more aspects of Hitchcock that you want us to tell. Yeah. Just to finish, I would say like something that actually Hitchcock said in one of his interview a couple of years ago. He said that when we tell an history in cinema, we should resort to dialogue only when it's impossible to do otherwise. Like he was always like he said that I was always trying first to tell an history in cinematic way through a succession of shots and bits of films in between instead of just actually saying or trying to tell the characters to state what the narration and the plot was. And actually, you can see how he used the, as I mentioned it before, as you mentioned it actually, uh, how the how he kind of shares this psychological role through the missing, how the customs, the I mean the clothing, the accessories actually are important. You can see that actually the missing is really important in his silent movies, to give this sense of the narration and climax of the scenes. So yeah, I believe that that is pretty much like the most important aspects of Hitchcock. But I mean, there is many more. There is you can explore many more. Hitchcock is, I mean, is between his formal aspects, as I mentioned in that figure at the beginning, and his psychological aspects and his formal approach. You can have a pretty broad um, analysis of his films. Like even now, many critics keep and keep and keep finding more and more and more his movies. But he actually was really important, and I feel that he is really important for films, for many of the genders, not just for horror movies, but also for dramas and for novelistic approaches as well. He's really important nowadays. So, no, thank you for having me. No, no, no. Thank you for actually coming here.